The blizzard that struck Montana Territory in February 1884 was merciless, but what Samuel Crawford discovered huddled against his barn defied all frontier logic. A woman of impossible stature lay shivering in the snow, nearly 7 feet of powerful frame wrapped in torn deerskin, giant form unlike anything he had encountered in 20 years of isolated ranching. Apache women of such size were legends whispered in saloons, warrior daughters who never traveled alone. But here she lay, unconscious and freezing, miles from any tribal land. Samuel's decision to bring her inside would transform his solitary existence forever, because when dawn broke, this mysterious giant would speak words that would bind their fates together in ways the frontier had never seen. Chapter 1. The Giant in the Storm. The Montana blizzard of February 1884 struck with the fury of nature unleashed, transforming Samuel Crawford's isolated ranch into a frozen battleground against death itself. Wind howled across the valley like wounded spirits, driving snow horizontally through air so thick that visibility extended barely beyond his outstretched hand. At 41, Samuel had weathered 20 brutal Montana winters, but this storm possessed a malevolence that tested every survival skill he had learned during 2 decades of solitary ranching. Samuel fought his way through knee-deep drifts toward his barn, concerned about his remaining livestock huddled inside the weathered structure. The cold burned his exposed skin like liquid fire, while each breath sent daggers of ice into his lungs. His cattle represented his only source of income, and losing them to this merciless weather would mean financial ruin in a territory where second chances came rarely and salvation never. Through the swirling curtain of white death, Samuel glimpsed something that made him question his own sanity. A dark mass lay crumpled against his barn's eastern wall, too large to be debris blown by the wind, too still to be a living creature. The storm's roar masked any sounds that might have indicated breathing, while the bitter cold numbed his senses beyond reliable perception. As Samuel approached through the deepening drifts, the shape resolved into something that defied his understanding of frontier reality. A woman lay unconscious in the snow, but not any woman he had ever encountered during his years of isolation. Her frame stretched nearly 7 feet in length, her powerful build suggesting strength that could match any cavalry soldier despite her obviously feminine features. Her clothing marked her unmistakably as Apache, deerskin garments decorated with intricate beadwork that spoke of high tribal status. Silver ornaments caught what little light penetrated the storm, their craftsmanship representing wealth that exceeded Samuel's entire property value. Most disturbing of all, she wore the distinctive markings of Apache nobility, ceremonial face paint that designated her as someone of tremendous importance within the tribal hierarchy. Samuel's frontier experience screamed warnings that had kept him alive through countless dangers. Apache women of such stature never traveled alone, especially not in winter storms that could kill the most experienced warriors. Her presence here, hundreds of miles from any known tribal territory, suggested circumstances so extraordinary that his involvement could bring consequences extending far beyond simple humanitarian assistance. Yet as he knelt beside her massive form, Samuel detected the shallow breathing that indicated life still flickered within this giant among her people. Frostbite had already begun claiming her exposed skin, while her lips had turned the blue-black color that preceded death from exposure. Without immediate shelter and warmth, she would become another casualty of Montana's unforgiving winter within the hour. Samuel's decision crystallized with the clarity that accompanied moments of absolute moral choice. Whatever complications might follow, he could not leave another human being to die in the snow. Chapter 2. Morning Revelations. Samuel's cabin had never felt smaller than it did that February morning, transformed by the presence of a 7-foot Apache woman whose powerful frame dominated every corner of his modest living space. Throughout the bitter night, he had tended her frostbite with melted snow and whiskey, wrapping her massive form in every blanket and buffalo hide he possessed. Her breathing had gradually strengthened as warmth returned to her body, but Samuel had remained vigilant, feeding his fire constantly to combat the deadly cold. The woman stirred at dawn's first light, her dark eyes opening with startling clarity despite her ordeal. She assessed her surroundings with the practiced awareness of someone trained in survival, taking in Samuel's anxious face, the modest cabin interior, and her own condition with rapid intelligence. When she spoke, her voice carried the deep resonance that matched her imposing stature, delivering words in carefully pronounced English that struck Samuel like lightning. She called herself Iona, meaning eternal blossom, though her warrior bearing suggested thorns accompanied any beauty. Her pronunciation of the name carried ceremonial weight, as if she were announcing someone of tremendous importance rather than simply providing identification. More shocking still, she addressed Samuel with a term that made his blood run cold. She called him her husband, speaking the word with quiet certainty that brooked no argument or misunderstanding. Samuel's protest died in his throat as Iona explained the sacred law that his rescue had unknowingly invoked. According to ancient Apache tradition, any man who saved a woman's life during winter storms became spiritually bound to her through what tribal customs recognized as marriage by divine intervention. The bitter cold that had nearly claimed her life had also created a spiritual connection that Apache law considered more binding than any ceremony conducted by human authority. Iona's noble bearing became more apparent as she moved carefully around the cabin, her movements revealing the fluid grace that marked Apache royalty despite her intimidating size. The intricate beadwork on her clothing told stories of her lineage. Daughter of Chief Thunderbear, leader of one of the most powerful Apache bands in the Northern Territories. Her unprecedented journey into Montana had been a vision quest, a sacred ritual that had led her hundreds of miles from tribal lands. The spiritual significance of their meeting extended beyond mere chance. According to Iona's calm explanation, Apache seers had prophesied that she would find her destined husband through trial by winter, a man whose courage would be tested by nature itself before their paths could unite. Samuel's willingness to risk his own safety for a stranger had fulfilled ancient predictions that had guided her dangerous journey into unknown territory. Samuel found himself studying this giant among women, noting how her presence filled not just the physical space of his cabin, but seemed to alter the very atmosphere around them. Her calm acceptance of their situation contrasted sharply with his growing panic about the implications of harboring a chief's daughter who considered herself bound to him by laws he barely understood. Chapter 3. The Binding Ceremony. Samuel spent the following day grappling with the implications of Iona's revelations while she recovered her strength with the remarkable resilience that marked Apache warriors. Her massive frame gradually filled out as proper nutrition replaced the desperate hunger of her vision quest, revealing the formidable presence that had carried her hundreds of miles through hostile territory. Despite his growing unease about their situation, Samuel found himself fascinated by her quiet dignity and the intelligence that shone through every conversation. Iona explained the sacred rituals that would formalize their spiritual union according to Apache law, ceremonies that required specific preparations to ensure the binding held legitimacy within tribal customs. The marriage by divine intervention demanded acknowledgement through ancient traditions that connected earthly unions to supernatural forces. Without proper ceremonial completion, their bond would remain incomplete, leaving both of them vulnerable to spiritual consequences that Apache beliefs considered worse than death. The ceremony itself required elements that challenged Samuel's understanding of frontier practicality. Sacred herbs needed to burn throughout a night-long vigil, while specific stones from Apache territory had to be arranged according to patterns representing the four directions. Most demanding of all, both participants needed to fast for 3 days while maintaining constant awareness of their commitment to the spiritual forces that had orchestrated their meeting. Samuel's concerns about territorial law added complexity to their situation, which Iona addressed with surprising knowledge of American legal systems. Her education at mission schools had included the study of federal treaties acknowledging certain tribal customs, particularly those involving marriage and family obligations. If properly documented, their union would carry legal recognition that territorial authorities would be forced to respect, regardless of personal opinions about mixed marriages. The practical aspects of formalizing their relationship extended beyond spiritual requirements to encompass survival necessities that would determine their future together. Ayana's presence at Samuel's ranch would eventually attract attention from both Apache search parties and territorial officials investigating reports of tribal activity. Their marriage would provide legal justification for her continued residence, while also establishing Samuel's status as someone with legitimate connections to Apache leadership. Ayana's physical preparations for the ceremony revealed the ritual scarification that marked her as Apache nobility, intricate patterns carved into her skin that told the story of her lineage and spiritual significance. She explained how each mark represented specific achievements or spiritual milestones, creating a living document of her identity that no external authority could challenge or contradict. As evening approached, Samuel realized that participating in the binding ceremony would irrevocably transform every aspect of his isolated existence. His simple ranch would become a bridge between two worlds, while his own identity would shift from solitary settler to husband of an Apache princess whose very presence challenged every assumption about frontier relationships. The ceremony began at sunset, initiating 3 days of spiritual commitment that would either forge an unbreakable bond or reveal the impossibility of their union across such vast cultural differences. Chapter 4. Hunters and Lawmen. The third morning of their ceremonial fast brought unwelcome visitors from 2 directions, each group representing dangers that threatened to tear apart the fragile union Samuel and Ayana had been forging through ancient ritual. Apache warriors appeared first on the eastern ridge, their war paint and aggressive postures suggesting they were hunting rather than rescuing. 6 mounted fighters positioned themselves strategically around Samuel's property, their weapons visible but not immediately threatening as they maintained careful surveillance of the cabin. Ayana recognized their leader immediately, her brother, Standing Wolf, a war chief known for his fierce protection of tribal honor and his particular devotion to family obligations. His presence meant that Chief Thunderbear had discovered his daughter's departure and dispatched his most trusted warriors to locate her. The intricate face paint worn by the search party indicated they were prepared for combat if they discovered she had been harmed or dishonored during her absence. From the western approach came a more ominous threat in the form of territorial authorities investigating reports of Apache activity in the region. Marshal Thompson led 3 deputies, their federal badges reflecting morning sunlight like warning beacons. Local ranchers had reported unusual smoke patterns and the discovery of Apache artifacts, prompting an official investigation into possible treaty violations or hostile preparations. Trapped between family obligations and territorial law, Samuel realized their ceremonial binding faced immediate tests that could prove more challenging than spiritual requirements. Standing Wolf's warriors would demand proof that Ayana remained unharmed and had not been coerced into any arrangements against her will. Meanwhile, Marshal Thompson possessed the authority to arrest anyone harboring Apache individuals without proper documentation or federal permission. Ayana made the crucial decision to reveal herself before either group could escalate tensions through misunderstanding. She emerged from the cabin in full ceremonial dress, her 7-foot frame commanding immediate respect from both Apache warriors and federal officers. Her noble bearing and obvious health demonstrated that she had not been mistreated, while her presence beside Samuel suggested voluntary association rather than captivity. The confrontation that followed would determine whether their spiritual marriage could survive the collision between Apache customs and territorial authority, with both cultures demanding explanations that satisfied ancient traditions and modern legal requirements simultaneously. Chapter 5. The Chief's Judgment. The thunderous approach of additional horses announced the arrival of Chief Thunderbear himself, his presence commanding immediate attention from both Apache warriors and territorial officials. The aging war leader rode with 12 tribal elders, their faces painted with ceremonial designs that spoke of sacred business rather than military action. His weathered features bore the wisdom of 50 winters spent navigating the treacherous politics of territorial survival, while his piercing gaze assessed the unprecedented situation with calculating intelligence. Marshall Thompson found himself facing complications that federal training had never prepared him to handle. Chief Thunder Bear possessed treaty recognition as a sovereign leader, his authority acknowledged by Washington bureaucrats who prefer negotiation to costly military campaigns. The Marshal's jurisdiction over Apache customs remained severely limited, particularly when dealing with family matters involving recognized tribal nobility. Standing Wolf dismounted and approached his father with formal respect, delivering a report that revealed disturbing intelligence about territorial activities in the region. Federal surveyors had been mapping Apache lands without tribal permission, while mining companies had established illegal operations on reservation boundaries. The chief's daughter had fled her vision quest after discovering evidence of systematic treaty violations that threatened the survival of their people. Ayanna stepped forward to address her father directly, her 7-foot frame radiating the dignity expected of Apache royalty. She spoke in rapid Apache, explaining her spiritual journey and the divine intervention that had led to her rescue by Samuel. Her words carried the weight of prophecy fulfilled, describing visions that had guided her dangerous trek into Montana territory and the sacred marriage that had resulted from her near-death experience. Chief Thunder Bear's response revealed the ancient prophecies that had shaped his daughter's destiny from birth. Tribal seers had foretold that she would unite two worlds through marriage to a man of courage who lived between cultures. Her unprecedented size marked her as a bridge builder, someone capable of creating understanding where conflict had previously dominated. The blizzard that nearly claimed her life had been the final test of worthiness for both participants in this destined union. The chief's judgment addressed both Apache customs and territorial law with diplomatic precision that impressed even hardened federal officials. He acknowledged Samuel as his daughter's legitimate husband while establishing a formal alliance that would provide legal protection for their union. More significantly, he offered to share intelligence about illegal activities threatening both Apache and settler communities, creating cooperation that served mutual interests. Marshall Thompson recognized the strategic value of Chief Thunder Bear's proposal, understanding that such alliances could prevent the conflicts that had consumed other territories in blood and violence. Federal authorities needed reliable intelligence about criminal activities that operated beyond normal jurisdiction, while Apache leaders required protection from systematic exploitation. The transformation of Samuel's isolated ranch into a diplomatic meeting ground represented unprecedented cooperation between cultures that had previously viewed each other with suspicion and hostility. Chapter 6: Two Worlds United. Chief Thunder Bear's formal blessing ceremony transformed Samuel's modest ranch into sacred ground where two cultures could meet as equals rather than adversaries. The ritual lasted from sunset to dawn, conducted according to traditions that predated territorial government by countless generations. Sacred herbs burned throughout the night, while tribal elders chanted ancient songs that had blessed such unions since time immemorial, their voices carrying across the Montana Valley like prayers made manifest. Samuel submitted to the ceremonial scarification that would mark him permanently as a member of Chief Thunder Bear's extended family, accepting the pain as proof of his commitment to bridging the gap between worlds. The intricate patterns carved into his skin told the story of his new identity, transforming him from an isolated rancher to husband of Apache royalty with responsibilities extending far beyond personal happiness. Ayanna's transformation was equally profound as she accepted the spiritual obligations that bound her to both her tribal heritage and her new role as cultural mediator. The ceremony formalized her status as a bridge between peoples, someone whose unique position could facilitate understanding where suspicion had previously dominated. Her 7-foot frame now carried the weight of expectations from both communities, each looking to her for guidance in navigating uncharted territorial relationships. Marshall Thompson witnessed these proceedings with growing recognition that he was observing history in the making. Federal authorities had never encountered such voluntary cooperation between Apache leaders and American settlers, particularly involving marriages that transcended racial boundaries through mutual respect rather than conquest or submission. His official reports would document the first legally recognized union between cultures that had previously viewed each other as irreconcilable enemies. The practical results of their union extended beyond symbolic significance to encompass genuine improvements in regional security and prosperity. Samuel's ranch became a neutral meeting ground where Apache families could conduct trade with territorial merchants under federal protection, while his marriage to Ayanna provided legitimacy that prevented either culture from viewing such activities as suspicious or threatening. Within months, their success inspired similar arrangements throughout the territory as other isolated settlers discovered the advantages of cooperation over conflict. Ayanna's intelligence and diplomatic skills made her invaluable as a translator and negotiator, while Samuel's reputation for fairness attracted business from both communities seeking honest dealing in an environment often characterized by exploitation and mistrust. The prophecy that had guided Ayanna's vision quest found fulfillment through unity rather than separation, proving that ancient wisdom sometimes offered better solutions than modern prejudice. Their marriage demonstrated that love could transcend cultural boundaries when supported by mutual respect and genuine commitment to understanding rather than domination. Samuel's transformation from lonely rancher to husband of a giant Apache princess became frontier legend, establishing a new model for relationships that served both communities' interests while honoring the spiritual forces that had brought them together against impossible odds. This incredible tale of love conquering impossible barriers shows how courage can unite divided worlds. If this story of Samuel and his giant Apache bride captivated you, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing frontier legends. Drop a comment telling us what you would have done in that blizzard. These untold stories of the Old West continue right here,